OCO, freethinkers. OCO, freethinkers. You're now tuned into the realest historian on the planet.
You are watching a master at work.
He's here to make you think.
This motherfucker don't miss.
No, he's fucking good.
That motherfucker don't miss, man.
He's good.
In the heat of battle, he don't miss.
No.
In the heat of controversy, he don't miss.
No.
The best teacher you wished you had in school. Have your pens and paper handy and get ready to take notes.
It's up.
It's go time, Slim.
Relax and take notes. Take notes.
King Kong ain't got shit on me.
The fuck you mean?
King Kong ain't got shit on me.
This man is unstoppable.
Are you ready?
It's Dane Calloway.
Two. We loud and clear? Two. Y'all can hear me, right? We loud and clear? We good? Yeah, we live on TikTok. We live on YouTube and YouTube Shorts. Now, I said I was going to live stream yesterday. I got tied up. And then on top of that, by the time we got to this thing to fix everything, it ran a little late. So we should be good to go. TikTok, y'all shouldn't have any hiccups at all. You know, it shouldn't be buffering or nothing like that. I think we got that situated. As far as YouTube and YouTube Shorts, y'all should be good to go also. But let me know if y'all see any hiccups. Let us know. I mean, you know, this equipment ain't, you know. Sometimes it can have a mind of its own. Shout out to all the gifters right there on TikTok. I appreciate that. Those of you that's joining, I know we late. Y'all can get on me about that later. I know we late, but look, we're gonna make it a fun evening. What is it? Saturday? What's today? It's Saturday, right? Yeah, we good to go. OCO. Yeah, it's Saturday. OCO Firebird, how you? Antoine, OCO. Let me see what we got in the house real quick. Wait a minute. Yeah, I'm I know it's Saturday now. Nah, it ain't Sunday yet. I mean, well, for certain people it is, matter of fact. You right. OCO Gary. OCO Montana. OCO Blue Dreamer. OCO Coco, how you? You new here? I'm glad you here. Shout out to Nola in the house. New Orleans in the house. Who else in the house? Y'all can blow the chat up real quick. Your city and state. Blow the chat up real quick. Let's turn it up. I could, matter of fact, we can turn it up real quick.
Turn
that chat up real quick.
Spamming emojis, she flat in the chat.
Yeah. Oh, so we got Detroit in the house. I see you. Okay, so Baltimore in the house. Greenville, North Carolina in the house. Cleveland, Ohio in the house. Chesapeake, VA in the house. Louisiana in the building. Eastern Shore, Maryland in the house. Oklahoma City in the building. North Hollywood, Cali in the building. I'm liking that. Asheville, North Carolina, man, I love y'all. I hope y'all doing well out there. Shout out to Asheville. Duval is in the building. What up, Texas? Texas checking in. Fort Worth, Texas, I see you. Boston in the building. Bryan, Texas in the building. Fredericksburg, VA. Dallas, Texas. Flint, Michigan in the building. East St. Louis in the building. New Orleans in the building. San Antonio, Texas. Dallas, Texas. Man, y'all up in here heavy. Okay, there go Georgia. What up, Georgia? Alabama in the building. Arkansas in the building. Ohio in the building. Illinois in the building. Tennessee in the building. Chicago in the building. DC in the building. Hey.
Set it on fire. 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 Fire.
Inglewood, Cali in the building. Phoenix, Arizona in the building. The Netherlands in the building. I appreciate that. Oh yeah, they mapped out. Yeah, now keep in mind I'm live on YouTube and TikTok simultaneously. So that's a beautiful thing. Brooklyn, New York in the building. Chicago in the building. Netherlands again. I see you, Antoine. Savannah, Georgia in the building. Downtown St. Louis. She said downtown. She put right where she Dane. We downtown. I know that's right. Mariota. Hold on, not Mariota. Marietta, Georgia in the building. Sacramento, Cali in the building. Atlanta. ATL in the building. Philly in the building. Columbus, South Carolina. There goes South Carolina. Great Wolf, you already know what time it is, South Carolina. You already know. Cuba in the building. What up, Cuba? North Dakota in the house. What up, North Dakota? Man, what's y'all temperature like, North Dakota? Y'all probably cold, right? I ain't trying to be funny. What's the temperature right now? Who out there over the 70s right now? Well, probably not right now at this very moment. Maybe Arizona. Arizona might be 70s right now. Somewhere in Cali might be. It was 65 today, tomorrow? Oh, you already know we set it on fire. Fire. Uptown New Orleans in the building. Fresno, what's up? Chicago, what it do? Yeah, don't forget we live streaming double. We're live streaming twice simultaneously on YouTube. So it's going to be the main YouTube and then YouTube Shorts. Main YouTube and YouTube Shorts. Oh, we got some trolls in the building already. Stay here. You're going to learn something tonight. Virginia in the house. Jacksonville, Florida. What up, Blue? What up, Jersey? Groove, Florida in the building. Yeah, man. So we like, we like to do our thing over here, and teach the people some things that some of them have no idea about, especially those folk over there on TikTok. Not all of y'all. It's just some of y'all, YouTube, y'all good. Y'all been checking it out, been rocking with me since 2016 on YouTube. I've been on YouTube since, damn, that's a decade, man. Let me drop a ball for that. Yeah, that's why we got to make moves, man. We got to make things pop. I'm just glad that this conversation is taking over. Not only the conversation, but people are doing their genealogy on their family to know for a fact who their family members are. That's the key. If you on YouTube, you haven't already, go ahead and hit that like button for me. Hit that subscribe button. Turn on that notification bell. You don't want to miss out on the next live stream or the VODs I'm getting ready to put out. Some new videos I'm going to put out. We tightening up a couple things that we getting ready to release. I know my wife is working on a few projects. I'm working on some projects. We got books in the works. A curriculum is coming out. Actually, the curriculum, y'all will see that. We talked about that before. Y'all gonna see that. We're gonna give y'all an update on that. Then we got events coming. And of course, we going back on tour. So that'll be a plus. Hopefully, I get to see one of y'all that's out there right now in person. And we could go from there. But yeah, I want to do it because, I realize I'm one of the leaders of the new school, and I feel it's my responsibility to take care of my people. Doing it for our past generations, doing it for our ancestors, those that paved the way for us, and definitely doing it for this generation here and those to come. I take this very seriously, extremely seriously. Like, I'm not up on here promoting something on Google and promoting something on Wikipedia. I actually do the footwork. Been putting in the footwork. I actually do the real research. I'm not, I have pulled up some PDFs, but I know it got to be more than just that. I got to pull up records, and I pulled up records. Government records, primary sources, secondary sources. I realized that many people out there look to me as their source. So I make sure that I stay on. I'm real hard on myself. To the point my wife complained about how hard I am on myself. She complained about that, and but I'm real hard, on myself when it comes to this stuff. I don't want to put nothing out that's not to what I feel as though is my standard that I set. Like, everything is getting cross-referenced before I even make it hit the public. Not only does it have to make sense, it has to be the truth. I'm not putting out no half-ass work, just to try to, let me hurry up and get this view so I could get this dollar and get these donations. And no, hell no. Hell no. That has never been me. That won't ever be me. But yeah, so I'm not, I tell y'all all the time that y'all don't have to believe me. For those of you that don't believe me, very good. But I would love for you to write things down, look them up on your own. Come back to me and tell me what you got. And again, you ain't gonna be able to find that answer in 2.5 seconds. Stop trusting them Googles and Chat GPT algorithms as if they got the answer. They don't. Every computer program has to be programmed by a human. Don't forget that. They're taking the algorithms of what people are looking up the most and what they're most interested in, okay, and what you gravitate to, and put it in front of you. It's a sales tactic. You got to be careful with those algorithms. I've been saying this for years. This particular topic that we're going to be talking about here is no, immigrants were not a part of the foundation of America. No, they weren't. And I may continue this on because I know this one probably going to be a little lengthy, but it's so much information that I want to cover in here that I doubt very seriously, even if we go for for example, 4 hours tonight, I doubt very seriously I'm going to be covering everything in this one live stream, but I'm going to be covering a lot of important details in this live stream that I know for a fact that the majority of our people are unaware of, no matter your skin complexion. I'm here to teach. Yes, I'm an author. I'm an historian. I'm an ethnographic researcher. I'm also a teacher. I'm a father of 5, husband of a beautiful wife. Oh, I should start rapping. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm about that life. You know what I'm saying? And everything I do is about the truth. And it ain't no lie. I'll do this until I die. You know what I'm saying? I'm talking about meeting the creator, whether if it's wherever it is, right in front of me or in the sky. Yeah, you know, I try. All right, let me end the stream. Bye. No, I'm just kidding. Here we go. All right, no, that was wax. Here we go.
It's up.
I'm playing around. I'm joking around. Y'all know I don't play when it comes to that music for real. All right, let me see. Let me get everything pulled up. We about to get started right now. Let me go ahead, set this up. Okay. All right, let me make sure I got the volume turned all the way up. What you mean? Hold up. They cutting the live? The live is off? Hold on. What live stream is off? I'm double checking. Nah, both live streams are up. Y'all good? Y'all can't hear me? I don't see, I see both live streams are up. Hold up, YouTube. Y'all I'm not sure which one y'all on. Are y'all on shorts? Or are y'all on the horizontal? Are you on the main one? Yes, I can hear you. It cut out, it cut back in. Yeah, nah, TikTok, I see you. I see all three of y'all. I see everything is fine. On my side, I don't know. All right, okay, now I see what y'all saying. So hold on, let me double check and make sure everything is okay. Here we go. All I'm trying to do is teach. Is somebody getting upset? Let's see what we can do. See if I can make it a little bit better on y'all side. Oh. No, I see what's going on. Wait a minute, I'm about to fix it right now. Real quick. Nah, y'all good. It's coming back. Hold on, let me check something real quick. Hold on. Yeah. No, I got it. Y'all should be good on that side, man. I think that was on me. I had to make sure that I was hardwired in. We should be good to go. Okay, let me pull this up real quick. Okay. All right. Now we good. I mean, on my side, it looked good. I made sure I was hardwired in properly. And I'm getting ready to play this segment right now. We good to go, right? YouTube, we good? TikTok, we good? Y'all good? Because okay. Good money. All right. We good on this side. Okay. Oh, okay, Blue. I got your text. I apologize. I stepped away from my desk to make sure. All right, so let's get it started. Let me cut this music off. Here we go. Let's start off right like this.
Throughout today's society of America, People are suffering from a variety of distractions that are placed in the forefront of the public's eye in order to maintain a particular degree of division amongst themselves. And when it comes to the history of slavery in America, some may feel as though slavery was abolished in 1865, when it was merely upgraded and transitioned into what it is known today as, which is employment. The industrialized version of what President Woodrow Wilson and his administration, along with multiple other co-conspirators like Henry Ford, J.P. Morgan, Andrew Carnegie, John D. Rockefeller, and the University of Chicago, just to name a few, created and enacted into law for the benefit of 1% of the people. And their social engineering experiment also included control over things that would affect one's mindset, controlling what is known as American history, religion, science, social media, and public education. In 1909, in front of a large set group of law advisors and educators, President Woodrow Wilson was quoted stating the following: "We want one class of persons to have a liberal education, and we want another class of persons, a very much larger class of necessity in every society, to forego the privileges of a liberal education and fit themselves to perform specific difficult manual tasks." End quote. In other words, compulsory educational institutions, which does not exclude colleges and universities, were handed down particular curriculums that taught its students how to become industrial providers that will benefit already existing companies of the open market throughout America's capitalist society, while the other class will be provided a much higher quality education, to say the least, allowing its students to think freely and become innovators in having control. Making excellence inclusive rather than inclusive will require revolutionary change, not just in our practices, but also in our mindsets. Dr. Carl Snyder.
Hold up. Y'all saying YouTube cut off again? I don't see that. I'm on here. I do not see that. That's crazy because I don't see that. It stopped and kicked you out the live. You keep getting kicked out the live. You got kicked out the live. Okay. Now that's definitely on YouTube. That's definitely not me. Everything is green. I can see my bars are in the green. My reception is up high. That's definitely not me, y'all. YouTube is fine. They must be trolling. We came back, it's going on. Okay, quietly come back and then YouTube. Okay, wait a minute. Hold on. Mods, tell me. I'm not sure who telling the mods. Can I have some mods on the main YouTube and some mods on the shorts? And then somebody on TikTok, because I'm not sure what is going on. Like, I don't know if they trolling or not. Nobody's trolling. That happened to me too. My YouTube is not cutting off. The live haven't stopped for me. YouTube is fine. YouTube is fine. YouTube is kicking me out. I'm okay. Okay, let me No, TikTok is good. I see TikTok is fine. Okay, here go Blue. Blue said that y'all have to go out and come back in. Thank you, Ash, for the Cash App, by the way. Thank you, Ash. Hold on, let me drop a bomb for Ash. But I'm good, right, Blue? Everything good? I can keep going. We good, okay. No, I paused the video. Yeah, I paused the video. As long as you can hear me, we live. I'm going to go back because apparently, I mean, we just at the beginning of the part, but I mean, interesting. Interesting. All right, here we go.
Throughout today's society of America, people are suffering from a variety of distractions that are placed in the forefront of the public's eye in order to maintain a particular degree of division amongst themselves. And when it comes to the history of slavery in America, some may feel as though slavery was abolished in 1865, when it was merely upgraded and transitioned into what it is known today as, which is employment. The industrialized version of what President Woodrow Wilson and his administration, along with multiple other co-conspirators like Henry Ford, J.P. Morgan, Andrew Carnegie, John D. Rockefeller, and the University of Chicago, just to name a few, created and enacted into law for the benefit of 1% of the people. And their social engineering experiment also included control over things that would affect one's mindset, controlling what is known as American history, religion, science, social media, and public education. In 1909, in front of a large set group of law advisors and educators, President Woodrow Wilson was quoted stating the following: "We want one class of persons to have a liberal education, and we want another class of persons, a very much larger class of necessity in every society, to forego the privileges of a liberal education and fit themselves to perform specific difficult manual tasks." End quote. In other words, compulsory educational institutions, which does not exclude colleges and universities, were handed down particular curriculums that taught its students how to become industrial providers that will benefit already existing companies of the open market throughout America's capitalist society, while the other class will be provided a much higher quality education, to say the least, allowing its students to think freely and become innovators in having control. Making excellence inclusive rather than inclusive will require revolutionary change, not just in our practices, but also in our mindsets. Dr. Carl Snyder. Now, since you have been made cognizant of how a liberal education was designed for only 1% of the people, that should make you question everything that you were ever taught in school, even if you earned a doctrine or any form of degree for that matter. Because it's not about you being taught the best education possible when you were being taught lies as your education to begin with. It's now beyond black and white issues. It's what's wrong and right issues. For example, over the years, the descendants of the indigenous Aboriginal Niji of Turtle Island, or rather the people that are falsely misclassified as African Americans today, are owed a lot more than just a form of reparations, and those who feel as though they should be paid for their direct ancestors' involvement with the creation and industrialization of the United States of America should be paid. However, just a simple check or lump sum of money given by those who benefited from our ancestors' labor to make amends for the now over 240 years of hereditary damage this capitalist society indulged upon our ancestors does not, in fact, resolve the overall issue. And here's why. Let's take the definition of reparations, for example, the one which is heavily highlighted to the public, stating that reparations is an act of making amends or giving satisfaction for wrongdoing, maybe in a form of payment for damages. But let's look at another definition for reparations, which is an act of repairing or keeping in repair. Now, doesn't that sound familiar? Sort of like when you take your car to a mechanic who has plans to fix the initial problem with your car, but somehow more damage is done, so that at a later time you are sure to return to continuously allow that same bad mechanic to work on your car unknowingly. Or I'll give you another example. It's like when you visit your doctor and he or she prescribes you a pill that allegedly cures one problem, but yet it somehow exposes you to several more. This is the problem with reparations. It does not fix the problem. It just covers it up for a certain time period. And yet, the problem still persists. Because in order to fix a problem, we must begin at the root of a problem. This is why it is critically important for our people to know the truth about our past in order to see exactly where the problem began. In my previous documentary called The Untold Truth About Reparations, ADOS, and Slavery in America, I shared detailed information about the Civil War, why and how it was a labor dispute, and I also mentioned that Abraham Lincoln did not free so-called African-American slaves with the release of the Emancipation Proclamation, or Proclamation 95. But what President Lincoln's Proclamation 95 did do, however, was ended the Civil War by quelling the advancement of military troops upon any people or person who did not agree with the United States government. Instead of fighting, it was urged by politicians for people to bring their disputes to Congress, but only through a representative of each state. This is how the United States was established, having learned how to govern the 13 colonies by watching the operations of the previous confederacies our ancestors owned.
By watching the previous confederacies that our ancestors owned is how they established it. Watch this.
I will go into more detail about this.
Hey, block that person. I'm sick of seeing that person in my TikTok chat. Block that person right there.
Later on in another segment. But what is important to note here is that in order to restore the Union upon the remaining confederacies that would eventually turn into governments of each state, a set of reparations had to be agreed upon in favor of the copper-colored landowners, sharecroppers, or the Negro farmers, making this one of the main possible reasons why Abraham Lincoln was assassinated in 1865. Now, reparations could have been delayed for the people of color due to a few factors. One, a study has never been conducted by any creditable source in order to discover just how much in a form of payment should the employees between 1776 and now be compensated for their binding contracts of forced labor.
Now, how much, before we go any further, how much do y'all think? That's a very good question. How much do y'all think we are owed? Be real. And I put a number on it. And look, don't say infinity. I agree with you, but hold on. Put a number on it real quick. Put a number on how much you think we are owed. Trillions? Okay. Billions? 5 trillion? 100 trillion? 80 billion? A lot. The whole country. Okay. Okay. 500 trillion. 1 trillion, 40 acres in a mule. 87 trillion. 12.1 trillion. Okay. 777 trillion. 999 trillion. A lot of people saying trillions. Okay. All right. I swear to God. Who said Bitcoin? Who said Bitcoin? Who said Bitcoin? I mean, well, look, the way Trump doing it now, Bitcoin right around the corner for everybody, huh? Allegedly. But somebody said Bitcoin. Man. All right, come on.
2. There were subdivisions doing business as institutions, agencies, banks, and corporations that history fails to mention, who worked as liaisons of the U.S. government, directly involving themselves with funding both sides of the 60.
Me personally, I wouldn't want a bit of Bitcoin from this government. What I would want from this government is their exit. We got it from here. That's what I would want.
Undocumented wars of the 18.
That's inevitable. That ain't wishful thinking. That's inevitable. Watch.
Hundreds. By creating loopholes and other schemes that forced our ancestors out of their own lands here in America, and also with streamlining the industrialized version of slavery that still exists today. 3. These companies were never held responsible.
Wait a minute. As I'm breaking it down, modern slavery, human trafficking, forced labor, debt bondage. Look, 29.8 million people in modern slavery globally. It's way more than that. It's way more than that. But all right, let's keep going.
For their actions in a courtroom, which makes it even more reason to reveal who should be held responsible still in order to bridge the gap between justice and equality for the
indigenous talk about the War Department?
Aboriginal needs.
Y'all about to know who it is.
The majority of bonds that were paid off by employers in order
These are
to
real
hire
bonds.
prisoners of war as their new employees were done so by either bartering or loaning contracts out.
See that? Some are $35 for the hire of the Negro, and it says her name, Maria, to be paid quarterly for the year 1834. And we further engaged to furnish the said Negro with good and sufficient summer and winter clothing in proper season, and to return the said Negro with good blanket at the end of the year. Above specified. This is what I mean by genealogy is very important, because you're not going to find slave records. You're going to find records that people were hired. This is another way of saying that this is an application for employment. Now, keep in mind, if they had stocks and bonds, they're going to say, well, it was we were property, Dane, we were property. They looking at you that same exact way when it comes to employment. Employment pull out insurance policies on their employees. That's property on their employees. That's right now. This is not a game. So anytime you hear slavery, think employment. Anytime you hear indentured servitude, think contracted employee. It's the exact same thing.
Employers as a form of business credit. This method remains intact still today. A bond is a, quote, promise to repay the principal along with interest on a specific date. Some bonds do not pay interest, but all bonds require a repayment of principal. When an investor buys a bond, he or she becomes a creditor of the issuer, end quote. So since the so-called slave master, or rather the employer, becomes the creditor, and the so-called slave holder, or rather the issuer of the bond, is the investor, then both parties are not only responsible for funding slavery, but should be held responsible for refunding the so-called slaves.
It's that simple. It's that simple. So that HR 40, and they talking about something they want to study, how come it took me, I want to say about a year in order for me to get this research done? It didn't take me long. HR 40 was brought about in 1989. Do you know they're trying to reestablish HR 40 again in 2025? And I showed you guys that Ayanna Pressley lady, the Democrat with the bald head, is trying to reestablish HR 40 again in order to continue to study. It's nothing for you to study. This information is publicly available. If I could get it, you could get it. I didn't have to create a whole commission. I didn't have to create a whole league in order to find this out. It's real simple. Those investors and creditors should be held responsible. And I'm going to tell you who they are in this video too. Watch.
Keep in mind that our ancestors were under the impression that they were not working for free, and that this form of slavery or blind capitalism will benefit everyone. especially those who were the majority of the help that literally built America from the ground up due to promises or contracts that were never upheld by the promising parties. Hence the term indentured servitude. The noun indenture is a, quote, written formal contract
and I'm
for services, a deed with mutual covenants.
You guys can see, you guys can find indentures if you do your genealogy on your family. You looking for that. Now, the majority of you who are indigenous to this landmass, the majority of your ancestors were landowners. This is how you know who was the slave and slave masters for sure. Paper trail. I dare you to look it up. I dare you.
So, who are these people that should be held responsible for the millions of broken promises, compulsory educational institutions, unpaid laborers, and unpaid military soldiers who fought and died for the uprising of this country, destroyed legacies, cultures, and spiritualities, inequality in workplaces, generational poverty, stolen land allotments, racism, concentration camps turned project housing reserved for only a large median of people.
Hold up, again.
Stolen land allotments, racism, concentration camps turned project housing reserved for only a large median of people of color, identity theft and paper genocide, and many years of injustice and discrimination? The answer to this question is very complex and will require me to produce multiple segments surrounding this topic to break it all down.
All the segments are in this
but
video.
Here's a
I got
critical
you.
example to make note of. The majority of our people now can recall hearing stories about how their ancestors and even some living elders were former sharecroppers, landowners, or farmers. And the way Hollywood paints the picture of American Indians should make you question why you would rarely see authentic photographs, painted or engraved images of the Hollywood depicted version of American Indians working in the fields anywhere across the southeastern region of North America. So,
listen, if they were not out in the fields working, okay, even if they were working for their own family, because in most cases, family members hired their family, okay, to work in the fields because they were taking care of their family on what you would call the plantation. Now, do we have any images of so-called Native Americans doing so? I'm looking at chat right now. Have you ever seen an image of so-called? This is how you could tell that those people are spanking brand new. You cannot find an image of them working out in the field. Now, I have previously shared with you all that we could find other foreigners working out on the field as well as our people. Okay? But those foreigners were not considered Native Americans. They were not considered natives. Not by way of paperwork. They weren't out in the field with a headdress on. You heard me, right? Let that sink in.
How would millions of American Indians be able to survive if they didn't know how to farm? And for that matter,
how would American Indians, millions of American Indians, be able to survive if they didn't know how to farm? That's
the
key.
American Indians have time to set some time aside to teach millions of so-called enslaved American Negroes how to farm, before these same millions of American Negroes taught the incoming white foreigners from Europe and Africa how to farm.
Think about that. How would a foreigner know how to grow crops in a foreign territory? This is another reason why you know we're indigenous to this landmass. That's impossible. If a person, for example, if a person came from Africa right now and tried to grow crops out here, as soon as they got here, how would they know which lands will be fertile, what time period they should do it? They're unfamiliar with the environment. It's a totally different environment. Think about that. I'm not saying that they don't know how to plant a seed. I'm talking about how are they able to grow crops successfully in order to take care of themselves and their family members without dying from trying first, because they don't know. The only way they would know is if our people taught them. Same thing goes for the foreigners. That's well documented. Those county agents, to further their expertise in farming that Martin Luther King was talking about, was our people. The U.S. Marshals, our people. The farmers, our people. The sharecroppers, our people. The tenants were the foreigners. You're going to learn throughout this whole segment. Watch. It get deeper.
The answer is very simple. The American Indian is the American Negro.
They've been lying to take the land from you.
King, you liken these payments to slave reparations, but just factually speaking, how can you say that? These payments are not for anyone descended from slaves. These are payments, they're not even for black farmers who were discriminated against all throughout the 1900s. They're payments specifically for black farmers who the USDA admits were being discriminated against between 1983 and 1997. So how are these slave reparations?
Well, I've sat on the Judiciary Committee for 8 years. I sat through slavery reparation hearings that were held by Chairman John Conyers, and of course through the hearings here on the Pigford Farms claims. And the motivation that comes from this looks to me like there's no resistance on the part of the proponents to hold back or look for fraud in this. They just simply seem to be content with every black farmer that would apply would get what was defined as Judge Friedman and in his opinion as virtually an automatic payment.
Dr. Boyd, though, let me just ask you specifically, though, staying on this topic. I mean, Representative King has talked about a hypothetical Johnny who was born on a farm but, quote, went off to the city, became a drug addict, and now wants the $50,000 that comes from the USDA under this claim. How strict is the vetting of these claims?
Well, first of all, I think that that statement has a terrible, terrible racial undertone and very, very offensive to our black farmers. And we need to forget here, we help feed the country. We help feed the world. And we paid our price to be in this country and to own land. And what the government done to black farmers is wrong.
How strict is the vetting? I mean, Representative King is saying just about anybody who's African American can claim to have been a farmer. So how strict is it?
The consent decree says African Americans who farmed or attempted to farm between 1981 and 1997. And the reason we use that definition is because the
I just remembered that I was on mute. What I was saying right there was, notice how they're referring to the 1980s at this part. But not only am I referring to the 1980s, I'm talking about prior to the 1980s. Okay? Prior. We owned millions of acres of land. Millions. That's documented. Out here in America. And yes, just like he said, we built America. Goes back to the title. No, immigrants were not part of the foundation of America. We built America's foundation. Nobody will be able to eat if it wasn't for us. In other words, nobody would be able to survive if it wasn't for us. This is real. This is real. And they were still, even after so-called slavery, they were still confiscating people's lands and farms. Even still. And that's what he was arguing about at this time. And they were still giving them backlash, racism, and a whole bunch of, no, they don't deserve it. And the government tried, allegedly, tried to give so-called black farmers a lift up and a thank you. And no, but, some politicians shut that down, right? And this brother Friedman actually attempted to fight.
Civil Rights Office at USDA was closed under the Reagan administration. And we went in and found and investigated and found thousands of black farmer civil rights cases that had never been processed. And that's what this case is about. This case is not about fraud. This case is about bringing justice and equality and fairness to a group of people who deserve it. And it's long overdue justice.
Congressman King, it is pretty shocking when you start to look into what happened in the USDA. I mean, they were literally throwing out discrimination claims, just dumping them in the garbage in some cases. You claim 75% of the claims now being made in this program by African-American farmers have been fraudulent. You say an unnamed person working for the USDA gave you that estimate. USDA says that percentage is complete nonsense. The FBI is investigated, they say, found only 3 cases of fraud. Where's the proof of this 75% claim?
The FBI got involved and only proved that it was 3 cases out of thousands that were fraud. These Congress people tried to stop it.
Well, and John Boyd says that there's no fraud. The FBI or the USDA has reported that the FBI came up with 3 cases that they prosecuted. Now, what is the level of fraud here? I've said that I had a district director who was deployed to Washington, D.C. to help administer the distribution of the first $1.05 billion under Pigford. He came back, he among others, with stacks of copies of the documents, sick at heart, and he said at least 75% are fraudulent. And so we can't say that there's no fraud here. Here's what we know.
Anderson,
Judge Friedman put in his decision, he wrote 40 acres and a mule in his decision. So I'm not making this part up about reparations. That is the words. That's the code words for reparations.
Wait a minute, sir. I've read that decision, and he just
$500.
Sir, I've read that decision, and he just used that in a recitation about the history of the interaction between African Americans and the U.S. government and the USDA. He wasn't equating 40 acres and a mule to this program.
Well, and also
let me say, though, Anderson, that he laments that he can't fix all the wrongs of slavery and segregation in one civil rights case. Now he's got a second one.
Mr. King,
I want Dr. Boyd to be able to respond. Dr. Boyd.
Let me talk here. The farmers deserve this restitution. It's long over.
The first document I found was the Aetna slave policy. The Aetna slave policy. The Aetna slave policy.
Aetna insurance. I pulled it up so you can see it. It get deeper, y'all. I tell you, every single company involved. Hold up, let me let y'all read that. Remember what I just said? That employers take out insurance policies on their employees. This still, slavery is still happening. And this is just one of them. This is just one example. You're going to see many, many more. It's not a game, y'all.
And as soon as the story broke in the media, they backed down on the restitution.
So as soon as it got into the media, they denied it. They didn't want to hand nobody nothing. Let that sink in. Acknowledge that they were issuing the slave policies during the 1850s. Offers an apology. Denies Reparations. Who smell a lawsuit? If y'all smell a lawsuit, type in lawsuit in the chat. We about to get their ass. Type lawsuit in the chat if you smell a lawsuit. This ain't over. Though, again, those that paved the way in the past for certain things to get done, but that they pointed out in the past, and I was able to pull things up myself and more, we coming after these people. We gonna pin them down. We not playing no games with nobody else's child here. Type lawsuit in the chat if y'all think that lawsuit should come. Let's go. Oh yeah, class action. Class action lawsuit. This is not a game. It's time, y'all. Men, to my fellas out there, don't get scared. Get suited and booted. I'm going to need you right beside me. Ladies, I need y'all to be warriors as well. Get suited and booted. Get ready. It's going to be a different type of war. It may even be televised. Get ready. Be ready.
The descendants continue to suffer collective sort of problems. They suffer from extraordinary problems in healthcare, in education, in housing, in every facet of life, infant mortality, life expectancy, in all the areas that speak to the quality of life. The descendants continue to suffer.
And what drives you?
Justice. I'd like to see that the truth is told and that these corporations that committed horrendous acts against my ancestors pay restitution. They should not be able to keep assets they acquired stealing people and stealing labor.
If our ancestors, and they did, created that wealth, then it seems to me, in a very logical way, that their descendants should benefit from that wealth, because that wealth having been passed down from generation to generation, companies, foundations, individual families.
I got all of this documented, y'all. So everybody that tried to do this before, if they're still around, I'm going to reach out to them to, for them to join us, but we could do this too. Okay. And we're going to need more than just 5 or 6 people. It got to be all of us hitting them. Get ready.
It seems to me that those who was directly responsible for creating it, since they did not benefit, notwithstanding the fact that they invested their labor and their lives and all the torture and
I see the mistake they made.
Process that went with slavery.
But at least they tried.
Their descendants should, just as the descendants of the wealth on the plantation owner and slave owners, their descendants are still enjoying the wealth. And many companies that came out of the slave period, their economic foundation was based, and stability was based on slave labor and the blood, sweat, and tears of slaves.
All right. So this is part 2. And then we got a part 3 after this. We going to knock all this out. Keep in mind, we got a few things coming, you guys. That I'm not kidding. This is actually in the works. We got a few things coming. So I need you to pay attention to the things that I announce that's coming up shortly. Because if you want to be a part of it, and I'm talking about for real, like a real fight, not marching, not putting up signs. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about hit these fools where it hurt. If you want to be a part of that, you got to be legit. You got to be legit. We got things set up where we going to know that you legit. Watch.
Reparations is the moral equivalent.
We gonna hit them.
Of what we're doing. But reparations is, as you know, a resurgent idea on the left. It's suddenly popular. At least one presidential candidate, but 2, I think, Kamala Harris and Elizabeth Warren, are now calling for reparations. Is that good or bad?
It got to be bigger than reparations.
Proposal that I ever heard. First of all, it's important to deconstruct it a little bit. Reparations, you know, the question is who pays and who gets paid. People don't realize that it's slavery. There were blacks who owned slaves as well. There were 3,700 blacks that owned 12,000 slaves. Now, 3 tribes, the Chickasaws tribes, the Creek Indians, they own 3,500 slaves.
Notice how he called them black, by the way. Notice how he called them black, but keep in mind, I told you that our family members hired our family members. Okay? That's not the point. We're talking about who benefited should be held responsible. Okay? That's what we're talking about.
So
that's who should be held responsible.
Should be, well, who pays? Do the sons and daughters of those blacks and Native Americans that own slaves, do their ancestors?
Now he turned around and said Native American.
And so it's a little more complicated than people are making. What about the whites who came here after slavery? What about the hundreds of thousands who died?
They benefited
again in the Civil War, who never owned slaves.
Right.
And so I just think that we ought to take this into consideration when we're talking about slavery. It's also providing exemption from personal responsibility. With all of the problems that Black America has, for someone to say that the answers to those challenges are external. Let's just say we accept the premise that reparations should be paid. What problem does it solve? If whites paid blacks money on Monday and we come back 2 weeks later, what would be the impact on black crime? What would be the impact of drug addiction?
I'm going to tell you right now, it will solve a lot of our problems. Number one, it has to be bigger than reparations. It has to be bigger than money. Once we gain control back of the lands that we once owned, that changes everything. That changes the whole demographic. At that point, we could provide jobs for those people out there that think they got to hustle, you know, drugs and stuff like that, to do drugs just to get out of these hoods. We could take poverty away. We could take poverty away. Keep in mind, he's a civil rights activist. And I told you guys that a lot of those civil rights activists were agents. I'm not going to bring that up during this segment as far as breaking it down, but I could do that in another segment. Because I have broken that, I broke that down all the way to let you guys know that was the civil rights movement was straight up a psyop by the CIA and the federal government. But yeah, the majority of those people were agents. Some of them had, great intentions. So I'm not saying all of them. Some of them did have great intentions, but a lot of them had to, suck up the massa. You know what I'm saying? They had to kiss massa feet, But at the same time, a lot of them either said that because they don't understand based off of them coming up in the 1960s. Okay. And that's all they saw. A lot of people were not doing the correct things. They put their energy on things that they thought was going to benefit for our people. Not one time can you display any example of what Black Power is, still to this very day. What Black Power was back then and what Black Power is right now, you can't grab an example of that. What, are you going to tell me that Black Power was you holding up a sign and marching? And what, and groups of our people got together and marched in Washington? That's Black Power? That's it? And you talking about what would be the benefit of that? What was the benefit of the Civil Rights Movement? Whole time the Civil Rights Movement benefited every American, not just one group. Let's be real. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. That benefited everybody, not just one group. So yeah, if you pull your people out of poverty, things will change. You give them a different community to live in, things will change. You give them a different environment to look around and keep up. Things will change. Keep in mind, the only reason why our brothers and sisters are fighting and killing each other is based off of the environment that they were pushed into. Don't forget, they moved our people into the inner cities and named them concentration camps and urban renewal areas and then forced them into other project housing areas, AKA the projects, the ghettos, and then definitely pushed a lot of crime and drugs over there to hurt. They wanted our people to kill each other. Here, no, I got a new way in order for you to make money. You don't got to go get a 9 to 5. Here, sell this drug. You gonna make it out the hood. And then it don't help that our music was promoting that too. But they were talking about things that were based in their environment. We glorified the drug dealers and we belittled those who were trying to be educated and do something for the community. It's time to flip it. And there's only one way that we could do that. It's not impossible. We got to change the environment. That is possible. We can do that, and we will. That's the answer to those questions that he's stating.
About the high
that will be my
dropout
answer.
rate. And so I just think it's lethal for us to just talk about a simplistic remedy so we can do virtue signaling on the issue of race and appear
It's not
to be
simplistic.
champions.
It's not simplistic. If it was simplistic, it would have got done and, everybody would have been accounted for when it came to, all right, well, we see this slavery was here and we owe these people this amount of money. No, it's not simplistic. They constantly are stating that they need to study this and study that. We don't never get a chance to see their results at all. They don't make that shit public at all. So it's not simplistic. It's more complex because it's people like you and other people that are like you, no matter their skin complexion, who are in the way, gatekeeping, don't want our people to progress, don't want our people to excel, don't want our people to provide the things that we need for our communities, for ourselves. When prior to this brother being born, our people did have these things before. Our communities were prospering. Tulsa, Oklahoma. Our communities were doing very well. Harlem, New York. We is example after example after example. Before our communities were infiltrated by foreigners and those that look like us, that does share that same hue of complexion and could be foreigners or could be indigenous to this land. They just had their mind manipulated. We were doing well. We were the capitalists of this society. We had it all. We had the jobs, we had the businesses, we had the banks, we had everything that we needed. We were not complaining back then. We made the mistake by desegregating our people. That was the biggest mistake we ever made in history. Well, the second. The first one was allowing foreigners to become friends with us. And they had their own agenda. We should have known better. I mean, all people, are more liable to make mistakes. But it's about learning the mistakes. Turn those losses into you learning to not make that same mistake twice. We could correct these problems. These problems could be corrected. It ain't over with. That's what this is about.
What we have done at the Woodson Center is we believe you should look into the Black America's past and find out how our ancestors achieved against the odds where there was racial inequality and income disparity. We built hospitals, we built schools.
Right. My
we
point.
had solid families.
And we were taking care of ourselves. Okay? I just got finished saying that. We had it all. He just confirmed what I said. So if you know that, then what makes you think that we can't go back to that and get what was owed to us for helping other people do exactly what we were doing? What do you mean it's more simplistic? It's complex. It is. The only thing that's simple, the only thing that's I could consider simple is your mindset into thinking that we can't get this done. You know when a person would call a person a simpleton? That was a prime example. You turned around and just admitted the truth right behind that. As if desegregation didn't hurt our people.
And so it is important for us to not to look back, but also to look at what are our strengths. And frankly, Tucker, I'm going to say I think Black America needs to abandon complaining about what happened in the past and begin to address the enemy within. That's the challenge we face today. And we won't do that as long as we're looking to the people we say who are enemies to be our liberators. Right. And we won't do that as long as we're looking to the people we say who are enemies to be our liberators.
I like that last part. But again, the beginning part of that was no. They gonna play both sides. I'm gonna let that sink in real quick. 99% of the failures come from people who have the habit of making excuses. Think about that. It's people out there, dang, we can't build our own nations anymore. They're gonna bring the government, they're gonna bring the army and the Navy. They scared, right? I mean, all you got to do is say, Dane, I'm scared. I mean, why are you making up an excuse? There's no excuse. We could get this done, and we will get this done. Ain't no ifs, ands, or buts about it. May not be with you.
Continuing where I left off from the first segment, this is where we shed some light amongst the darker areas of America's history and pinpoint the mistakes that were made that are in desperate need of correction. Mind you, in order to fix a problem, cowards. You must first begin at the very root of a problem.
Very root of the problem. Remember that's answering this question too. In order to fix the problem, you got to begin at the very root of the problem. That's the only way you're going to know where the problem resides, where it derived from. That's how you correct the problem. You got to know it.
You are skipping vital information that could lead us into positive changes in the near future. This is why it is very essential to know the truth about your past, because if you allow a stranger to tell you all about your past without any valuable sources of creditable documentation, you will inadvertently misrepresent yourself and, more importantly, misrepresent everything that your direct ancestors died for. So, who are these people that should be held responsible for the millions of broken promises, compulsory educational institutions, unpaid laborers and unpaid military soldiers who fought and died for the uprising of this country, destroyed legacies, cultures, and spiritualities, inequality in workplaces, generational poverty, stolen land allotments, racism, concentration camps turned project housing reserved for only a large median of colored people, identity theft and paper genocide, and many, many years of injustice and discrimination? The most important persons of value towards this floating debt system would be the victims of sharecropping, the Negro farmers. Agriculture was big business throughout North America, even before the Civil War, and history fails to mention that it was the Negro farmers who were wronged by everyone else involved in the trade of resources and goods. People of today's society of America tends to believe that slavery in America was about some pale-faced foreigner living on a farm or plantation in which he allegedly owned many slaves. And numerous people would suppose that all of those slaves were so-called black people being held in bondage. No, during that time period of the South, the majority of farms were actually owned by people of color, and many of the pale-faces known around town were slaving, or rather conducting laborer duties as promised, being as though they were squatters on those farms. which meant that their occupations were to assist the landowners with producing crops and maintaining the farm's livestock, etc. These squatters were later referred to as tenant farmers.
Listen, you gonna learn it. Hey, we about to get into it. You gonna learn. You gonna learn. You gonna learn. Let's get it.
This process is known as the system of sharecropping. According to the Webster's Dictionary, sharecropping is defined as a tenant farmer, especially in the southern U.S., who is provided with credit for seed, tools, living quarters, and food, who works the land, and who receives an agreed share of the value of the crop minus charges. End quote. In other words, there was a particular trade relationship between the Negro farmers and the tenant farmers that were now squatting on their lands. And thanks to the likes of public laws, like the Preemption Act of 1841, for example, the Negro farmers were unaware that their lands could now be purchased and claimed by the tenant farmers after just 14 months of residence.
Listen. Look how they tried to do that. Listen to that one more time.
Farmers that were now squatting on their lands. And thanks to the likes of public laws, like the Preemption Act of 1841, for example, the Negro farmers were unaware that their lands could now be purchased and claimed by the tenant farmers after just 14 months of residence. The Preemption Act of 1841 granted settlers the right to occupy the Negro farmers' lands legally, but fraudulently, and the government, along with many other co-conspirators, even without permission from Negro farmers, changed these lands to read as public lands due to the establishment of the land banks.
Write that down, screenshot that real quick. Don't forget, I be giving you my sources. I be stating it, and I be showing it to you. Don't forget that. I don't play no games.
System, in which I'll get into this shortly. As I've mentioned in my previous segment of this topic, slave contracts, or rather indentures of servitude, were created by banks and business owners, and they were sold with floating debt, or rather credit. But how do you take Negro farmers and then turn them into a slave? Well, you introduce them to the idealism of currency. Today, currency is defined as a system of money in general use in a particular country. The word currency derives from the Latin word currere, which means to run. It is a flow of energy which runs and circulates from person to person. This is why trading was career. Listen. Introduced. The term trade is a Middle Dutch word from the late 14th century, meaning track or course. And in order to produce currency through trade, one would use their own energy to run that same track or course.
Yep.
This formal practice was conducted amongst most tribes and or nations of people for quite a while. And in order to make a slave, you would first have to slightly alter the...
Wait a minute, let me go back. That went a little quick, because I gave you one of my sources right there. All right, I tried to put the whole thing on the screen. I'm gonna continue to play.
Was conducted amongst most tribes and or nations of people for quite a while.
Of the settlements and see, I be reading the stuff that you ain't gonna read. I'm gonna tell you that right now. I be getting the stuff that you ain't gonna read. But all of this is documented.
And in order to make a slave, you would first have to slightly alter the process of the said trade system that was initially utilized by adding in a form of currency. An environment for economic behavior was induced upon the trade process, which allowed for the devaluation of the products that were being exchanged. And with this change came a decreasing need for having a great amount of Negro farmers, because any individual could buy from a Negro farmer and sell whatever it is back to the consumers at a higher rate. causing that individual to put whatever price tag they want on that same flow of energy that someone else provided. It's essential to note that this task was very difficult to manifest during much earlier time periods of history across these lands due to the common use of gold and silver and other things of value that provided a medium of exchange. Originally, there was a bartering system.
Bartering system was first.
For the trade of goods and services in return for other goods and services, but not.
That's where you get the term, if I scratch your back, you scratch mine. If I scratch your back, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, that term, that little phrase. Scratch my back, I scratch yours. That's where we got it from.
Necessarily being of equal value.
Y'all want me to rewind? Rewind what? That part right there?
That someone else provided. It's essential to note that this task was very difficult to manifest during much earlier time periods of history across these lands due to the common use of gold and silver and other things of value that provided a medium of exchange. Originally, there was a bartering system which allowed for the trade of goods and services in return for other goods and services, but not necessarily being of equal value. And when it comes to the Negro farmers, whatever was needed will have to be purchased directly from the Negro farmer at the farmer's price, due to the pale-faced squatters' lack of knowing how to farm. But with the creation of a credit system and a paper currency, a person could then purchase from the Negro farmer with floating debt, which is credit, and then sell those same crops grown by the Negro farmers to another person at whatever price they choose. This was the birth of what is known as the open market. Any person that takes advantage of this utilitarian method could now also control consumption or depletion, which segues into supply and demand. Note that this was not a quick process of just taking someone's word for a product, crop, or piece of paper. Other forms of currency were set into place first, like silver, gold, and coins, etc., to make purchases and conduct trade for crops and land, because it was seemingly smarter and more convenient to carry a note that somehow held the same value as weight in gold, opposed to actually carrying around a large bag of gold. Shortly thereafter, instead of holding onto large surpluses of crop.
Miss Tubman, chop that person out of my TikTok. I don't want no spam in my chat, please. No spam in my chat, please.
For trade, people began to do business under promises, literally, deciding to trade in their valuable commodities for promissory notes, making this the biggest mistake ever made in U.S. history without any exaggeration. Multiple promissory notes were circulating during this time period, but they were known around town as greenbacks. Then officially became known later on as legal tender notes.
Here we go.
This is what began the circulation of a paper currency here in the U.S. In the year 1862, Congress passed the Legal Tender Act, which not only allowed for the finance of the Civil War, but it was also used to ripen the climate for the National Currency Act of 1863, which allowed for the creation of a national banking system. And then there was the National Bank Act of 1864, which required the banks to purchase government bonds, or rather indentures of servitude, which were literally oral or written contracts that stated that labor will be redeemed for these same legal tender notes.
All right, so now you know the ownership was transferred. Remember when I tell you that slavery was never abolished, slavery was literally upgraded and transitioned into what we know as employment. Now you know where it went and what year. National Bank Act of 1864. I'm trying to tell you, I when I teach. I don't play no games. All of this stuff is publicly verifiable. All of it. You never heard it before? Sit back. I got you. That's what you're supposed to have a pen and paper handy, right?
The best teacher you wished you had in school. Have your pens and paper handy and get ready to take notes. Take notes.
Relax and take notes.
Set it on fire. 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 Fire.
And although it is true that the Civil War required a substantial amount of money and credit for the manpower used, most importantly, someone needed for those wars to happen so that those monetary acts could take place. The creation of legal tender notes opened the doors wide to a monopoly and allowed for a small group of people to now have.
Look at that. Look at what I highlighted. Receivable in payment of all public dues on demand. Pay attention to that.
Full control of the trade.
Let me come back a tad bit.
Importantly, someone needed for those wars to happen so that those monetary acts could take place. The creation of legal tender notes opened the doors wide to a monopoly and allowed for a small group of people to now have full control of the trade. This small group of people were known as bankers that eventually controlled everything from crops, land, products, and even the trade of people and the government. A legal tender note was the U.S. form of paper money from the years of 1862 to 1971.
Wow. Wow. Let that sink in. We're going to get into the Federal Reserve notes, but I need you to understand these legal tender notes was the U.S. form of paper money, 1862 to 1971. That was not that long ago. I break this down.
And many
Watch.
of these legal tender notes were backed by gold, and some of them weren't.
Some of them were backed by gold. Some of them weren't.
That is why someone or some bodies thought it was necessary to replace them with Federal Reserve notes, starting in the year of 1933.
So 1933, somebody wanted to replace them with the Federal Reserve notes. Who was that, y'all? Who wanted to replace it? 1933. Who was that? Come on, chat. Who was it? Y'all say Rothschilds, Morgans. Somebody say Roosevelt. FDR, Roosevelt, Rothschild. All right, here we go.
The government made it illegal to own or hoard a certain amount of gold, which was, of course, more valuable than their legal tender notes across the world. And with Executive Order 6102 becoming law, all gold was called out of circulation, and anyone with gold was ordered to turn it into the Federal Reserve banks.
Roosevelt started it. All right, let's back that up. That's very important.
A certain amount of gold, which was, of course, more valuable than their legal tender notes across the world. And with Executive Order 6102 becoming law.
Look, signs the Gold Reserve Act. Now listen closely to how they did this, y'all.
All gold was called out of circulation.
All gold was called out of circulation.
And anyone with gold was ordered to turn it into the Federal Reserve banks.
So anyone with gold had to turn it into the Federal Reserve. And I show it to you. This is not a game. I'm going to let you look at it. This is not a game. And remember how people used to say, nah, Dane, nah, our Federal Reserve notes are backed by gold. Oh, really? You mean the gold that they took from Gaddafi? The gold that they took from Saddam Hussein? The gold that they took from our ancestors? You talking about that gold?
Any persons not adhering to this order by law was subject to hefty fines.
How is it backed by gold when they took it? How?
Or imprisonment, or both. Why was this so important to the not adhering to this order by law was subject to hefty fines or imprisonment, or both?
So you could be subject to hefty fines or imprisonment, or both, if you ain't do this. Keep that in mind.
Why was this so important to the government? Simply because of the difference between a legal tender note and a Federal Reserve note.
Here we go.
One note represents a bill of credit for something received, which was a representation of the government's indebtedness towards the holder. And the other note represents a fiat currency, which is not backed by any physical commodity.
So wait a minute. One is the latter is the fiat currency, not backed by any physical commodity. So how is it backed by gold? Uh-oh. You gonna learn today.
Silver or gold, making the government non-liable for its use or misrepresentation.
Or misrepresentation. That means that they putting that debt on who? Who they putting that debt on? Okay.
This Federal Reserve note has been the main form of currency since the Executive Order 6102 was given in 1933. And it is also important to note that this presidential order stems from the Trading with the Enemy Act of 1917, which
gave you a cross-reference. Ooh, the way, hey, the way I snuck that in there. Back up. I snuck that in there. Here go another one. Here we go.
And it is also important to note that this presidential order stems from the Trading with the Enemy Act of 1917, which gave the president power to oversee and restrict any and all trades between the United States and its so-called enemies in times of war. All of this falls back on the establishment of the credit and debit system and how the creation of credit scores affected the buying rights of people of color, still to this very day. So, this allowed the government to continue with printing paper money that was not backed by an equal amount of silver or gold. But wait a minute, if paper money is not backed by any previous commodity or any physical security, then what is it backed by? Nothing other than human capital.
It's you. All right, come on, part 3. Let's go. Let's go.
The root is land.
Land.
How much land do we own? Land, earth. Well, we were set free, so-called, in 1865. By 1910, the black people who were just set free owned 16 million acres of land in America.
And it's actually bigger than that. Now, he said by 1910, our people owned 16 million acres of land in America. And it was actually way larger than that. Now, I'm not going to be able to fit all of that in this segment, but I am going to bring that back up in a different segment because this has to be expanded upon. I need you to see how much we own. 16 million acres It's still a lot, don't get me wrong, but it was way, way more than that. Way more than that. Hundreds of millions of acres we owned. Just set free was the terminology that he used. That's Farrakhan, by the way. Let's start it over.
The root is land. How much land do we own? Land, earth. Well, we were set free, so-called, in 1865. By 1910, the black people who were just set free owned 16 million acres of land in America. Then we built towns.
Then we built towns.
On the land that we own. We cut down the trees. We made homes. We were the people that built America for white people. But when freedom came, they didn't want us to be the only artisans, craftsmen, engineers.
He was right. He was right. Oh, man. He was right.
Towns.
We built towns on our lands.
The land that we own. We cut down the trees. We made homes. We were the people that built America for white people. But when freedom came, they didn't want us to be the only artisans, craftsmen, engineers.
We like to think about what's gone wrong in our country as a misunderstanding. You know, we have this dialectic of race relations. We need to heal the divide between the races. You know, as though this is somehow natural, as though it was something passive that just, you know, a miscommunication that just sort of happened. But in fact, what we see is policy after policy after policy of plunder, of taking things from black people and giving them to other people. The case for reparations rests on a really, really simple notion. What you have taken should be given back. It's quite simple. It's quite simple.
Some 2020 Democratic candidates are touting their support for reparations for slavery. Kamala Harris, Elizabeth Warren, and Julian Castro have all gotten on board with the idea. But before we all jump on the bandwagon, let's take a look at what the actual cost could be using those Pickford payouts to black farmers under the Obama administration. Of course, they were discriminated against by the USDA. Each were given $50,000. It was awarded to over 33,000 farmers or their heirs. So if we apply that same model right now to every black American and people of multicultural who say they have black descendants, then we're talking about $2.5 trillion.
How much?
We're talking about $2.5 trillion.
How much?
We're talking about $2.5 trillion.
How many?
We're talking about $2.5 trillion. We're talking about $2.5 trillion.
Way more than that. Here we go.
Continuing where we left off during the second part of this segment, we begin with sharing more details on how this system was designed to benefit only 1% of the people. These ideas of colonization were originally experimented on other people outside of the Americas.
South Africa. Don't forget that. They did the same thing to South Africa. Shout out to South Africa. You know why? Because they took that back over. The original, the indigenous South Africans took it back over.
And carried over to these
Shout out to them.
With a more desperate need to succeed at monopolizing an already existing form of trade here.
Watch this.
It was said that whoever controls the trade controls the land. And with the creation of currency, the use of shares, stocks, and bonds, along with the implementation of economics and exchange, the Negro farmers would soon lose control of the trade here in the U.S. And subsequently, they also lost control over their lands with the help of the banks. A bank is defined as a retail or commercial financial institution that is licensed by the government to receive and loan money. The word bank derives from the old Italian word banca and then the Middle French word ben banque, in which both words are defined as a table which is why the etymology of the word bank is defined as a money lender's exchange table or a money box. The term money box was the obsolete sense of the original meaning for the word stock, which also meant a subscribed capital of a corporation. In other words, stock was the term used to describe the movable property of a farm. Now, some of you may feel as though this is in regards to the animals on the farm, like livestock, for example, but unfortunately, it also holds true to the other movable objects on the farm as well, like those that work on the farm, who were also labeled as stock and kept account of. To be kept in stock meant to be kept in possession of a trader or to be imprisoned. Prisoner of war. And here's why. Paper currency had oftentimes been hard to come by during its earlier days of existence, due to the bartering system being widely recognized. Many of the Negro farmers were making purchases literally off of promises. And because certain crops only came once a year, there was a credit system that was used to where things could be purchased all year round. And the money would be paid through the sale of the crop when it was ready to be purchased. Whenever the crop received was lower than expected.
Y'all actually saw some of my footage when I was out there in Virginia, Southampton, Virginia. Shout out to Southampton, Virginia.
Or if it was so.
And by the way, all those people that own them farms that we went past were of color. Okay. Whole nother topic. I'll get into that later.
For less than it should have been, the farmer would then fall behind on his or her credit, and this invincible amount of currency owed would be tacked onto next year's amount due.
Okay, now y'all got to understand how they did that. Let me come back so y'all can see how they did that, because they did it all year round. Okay, now even though you may assume that they can only grow particular crops and during particular seasons, okay, but they made this system go all year round. Look, listen to how fraudulently they got this done.
Only came once a year. There was a credit system that was used to where things could be purchased all year round.
All year round.
The money would be paid through the sale of the crop when it was ready to be purchased. Whenever the crop received was lower than expected, or if it was sold for less than it should have been, the farmer would then fall behind on his or her credit, and this invincible amount of currency owed would be tacked onto next year's amount due. After so many times of this happening, the Negro farmers will be then forced to either get a loan or to sell their farm.
You heard that? So they tacked the debt that I'm talking about invincible debt, onto the bill of another invincible debt from that past year onto the next year. Okay? Eventually, that's one way that they were able to confiscate the land. That's just one.
What is also very important to note is that in the 1860s was something called the crop lien system, where the farmer would sign over the deed to their farm.
Hey, Texas. When a farmer would sign over the deed, Texas, that's say Houston, right? Houston, y'all in the chat? That's say Houston, right? Deed of trust, right? Talk to me. Got the farmers signing their deeds over. H-Time. Ain't nobody but us in H-Time. Think about that.
It's also very important to note is that in the 1860s,
that's one example. I'm just letting you know.
Something called the crop lien system, where the farmer would sign over the deed to their farm and still be able to work on the farm to pay it off.
Crop lien system. What that sound like, y'all? Sign it off until they can pay it back. What that sound like, y'all? Don't that sound familiar to you? Remember, is your job is your credit type thing? Or as long as you got a job, you can get a car. As long as you got a job, you can get a loan. You could payday loan and wait a minute, mortgage, hold up, rent, hold up, wait a minute. Whole bunch of it, ain't it? Yeah, credit loan. You seen how they set that up? Made it seem like it was cool because they know they won't ever be able to come out of that debt. Invincible debt. They didn't owe a goddamn thing. Realistically. Here we go.
However, with the rise of taxes, transportation costs, and storage fees, etc., this became very difficult to do so, which eventually led to foreclosure, allowing for the banks to now own our ancestors' lands.
Listen. This is the reason why I constantly tell y'all that we could get the land back, because they took it from us fraudulently. They took it from us fraudulently. Again, this is just one way that they did it. But I did mention that they raised the prices up, including the taxes. Whatever they did, they raised up. Whatever payment needed to be made according to their rules and regulations of the farm, they raised it up so our people could no longer afford it. Then it goes into foreclosure. Then it goes, the banks come sweep them up, right? For example, you go get your loan, your mortgage done at a bank. You can't no longer pay that mortgage. It's going back to the what? It's going back to the bank. You can't pay that property tax. It's going back to the bank. Look how they set it up. You own property. You can't pay that property tax. It come to the bank. Here come the bank. Look, yep, same thing with the cars. That's right. It's the banks that's giving you the loans on them cars. The car, they allegedly paid the car off. The money is thin air. They not cashing out on no car. With real money. Listen. And they charge you an arm and a leg to keep you under contract. And they raise that monthly rate up to the point where they know you can't afford it, so they could eventually confiscate it. And it's not the dealership doing that, it's the bank. But the dealership work with the bank. Dealership. They making a deal with the bank, not with you. They gonna say that you get a great deal when your credit score high. That's cap. My credit score high. What great deal? Oh, the fact that I ain't had to put no money down? You talking about that? That's a great deal? The price is still the same. The deal would have been you coming off $20,000 on that car. That would have been the deal. It's all fraudulent. The whole thing. It got to go. You got to go. Only way it's going to go is if we set up our own. We don't got to wait on Trump. Keep in mind, they created this system. We could create our own system. And it don't got to be done fraudulently. Again, this is not hard. It's not impossible. I can't wait.
With the preemption.
And then we should hit them. Okay? And get our money back. After all of these years here, ain't nobody else go through that but us. Nobody.
Act of 1840 led.
All right, let me come back.
With the rise of taxes, transportation costs, and storage fees, etc., this became very difficult to do so, which eventually led to foreclosure, allowing for the banks to now own our ancestors' lands.
It's up.
With the Preemption Act of 1841 already set in stone, the tenant farmers that were squatting on the farms and sharecropping with the Negro farmers were given first dibs on purchasing the lands, and in many cases, for free. Now,
Oh, I'm muted. Sorry about that, y'all. I'm glad y'all telling me that. Hold on, let me go back because I was answering a young lady's question. She said, why us? The reason why is because we were the landowners. We were the sharecroppers. I'm talking about the majority of the landowners and the sharecroppers. So yes, they tried to do things to sweep it from up under our feet. Now, keep in mind that we not only had the land, we had control of the trade. And remember, in part 1 and many other segments that I put out there to let you guys know that commerce and trade came through us. They were attempting to control that trade. And they knew for a fact that it had to deal with the land. They needed control over the land in order to control the trade. Control trade and commerce. But yes, that's why they attacked us, because of that. We had the stronghold. This is the reason why we were so successful when a society became a capitalist society. We were at the top. We outdid everybody. This is the reason why the government gave them a handout. I'm talking about the foreigners coming over, a handout. After we didn't put in all the work, they was handing everybody else land allotments, and federal subsidies, not the farm. Don't forget. That's what Martin Luther King said, and that's what reflects in the records. And they're the very same people telling the black man that he ought to lift himself by his own bootstraps. Prior to that, he said, not only that, they provided county agents to further their expertise in farming. Not only that, they provided low interest rates in order that they could mechanize our farms. Not only that, today, many of these people are receiving millions of dollars in federal subsidies, not the farm, and they are the very people telling the black man that he ought to lift himself by his own bootstraps. You're talking about this era right here. You're going to learn today.
Some of you may feel as though this sounds like a fair deal, but what if I told you that these same tenant farmers were already expecting for things to happen the way they did? After being in office for only 3 months as the Vice President of the United States, Andrew Johnson, a racist, bigoted Democrat, became the president immediately after President Abraham Lincoln's assassination. Johnson was also the military governor of the very first state to re-enter the Union after the Civil War, which was the state of Tennessee in the year of 1866. Now, according to whitehouse.gov, he used the state of Tennessee as a laboratory for Reconstruction. So it's no surprise that also in 1866, Johnson sent out a U.S. Department of Agriculture official named Oliver Hudson Kelley in order to survey the South and the agricultural industry, as it was right after the Civil War. And after this survey, Oliver Hudson Kelley responded with the creation of a secret society, very similar to the Masons, but this secret society was formed off of the industry of agriculture. So, with the help of 5 politicians and a banker, Oliver Kelley founded the National Grange of the Order of Patrons of Husbandry.
Hold up. I know that was a lot to sink in. Many secret societies were formed, and don't forget that their main course was agriculture. They had to control the commerce and trade. They had to control the trade. Watch this.
In 1867, Grange is an old French word that means granary, barn, or farm. And the term husbandry is defined as someone that manages the conservation of resources, which meant that they were fully intending to take ownership of these farms from the creation of this society.
Now, look, I'll be going in. Let that sink in. Let that sink in. Ain't no teacher out there teaching y'all this. Not one. Pay attention.
Side note, the etymology of the word bond defines it as a husbandman or householder. The National Grange movement that was said to have been created in order to increase farm profits for farmers, unite Southern and Northern farmers, create co-ops for farmers, and to modernize farming practices. But the Negro farmers were banned from joining this movement. The National Grange supported the efforts of politicians and advanced several political candidates that were a part of the Greenback Party that allegedly carried an anti-monopoly ideology.
Wait a minute. You learned about the Greenbacks, the promissory notes, the Greenback Party. Let that sink in. Another society.
The movement encouraged the distribution of greenbacks and worked diligently in order to remove the middleman out of the farming industry, who were the Negro farmers, by playing a key role with the establishment of the farm credit system. In the year 1916, then President Woodrow Wilson and his administration established what is called the FLB, also known as the Federal Land Bank, which is a system of banks that aided farmers in rural communities. Rural is another way of saying open space or open land or country. President Woodrow Wilson's main focus was to enforce a new era in business upon all business entities throughout North America by making drastic changes to the economy, by federalizing all operations concerning the trade. The Federal Land Bank consisted of a total of 13 banks, not 12. Listen closely. Originally, before the Confederate States separated from the Union, the foreigners called these lands the 13 colonies, and soon after these rural areas were set.
Yep, that deserves a rewind, right? But okay, Boston, New York, because they saying 12. Boston, New York, Chicago, St. Louis, Philadelphia, Cleveland, Minneapolis, Kansas, and
before the Confederate States separated from the Union,
Richmond, San Francisco, Atlanta, and Dallas.
all these lands, the 13 colonies.
The reason why it was 13 is because the headquarters was in Washington, D.C. Okay? I'm jumping ahead. The headquarters was in Washington, D.C. It's across the street from the White House. And I talked about this last live stream when I had the open panel. And I know I go back and forth with my wife about this constantly. I'm like, a lot of that money is still there, sitting dormant. My wife is like, it's too late for them to get that. And I'm like, well, how could it be too late? If it's sitting dormant, they got to give it back to whoever put that money in there. Like, I mean, it can't just be, okay, let's just leave it there. But I'm just saying, again, the Freedmen Bank. Yeah, I'm just saying, because that's a lot of money. I did a couple of segments on the Freedmen Banks, a couple of them, at least 3. And then another one I mentioned on my Frederick Douglass segment, okay, about that. You know what? I may even make that one of the topics on, a future live stream. I'm going to bring that up. I am going to bring that up. Again, it's layers to this stuff. But a lot of our people, a lot of our ancestors invested money inside of these Freedmen Banks. Yeah, buddy. That's a whole nother conversation.
And soon after these rural areas were sectioned off and underlined as estates, various laws were passed, allowing each estate to have jurisdiction over their government-appointed district.
And I just want to
Federal Reserve District.
I just want to note. I mistakenly hit that button.
I will not be debating Dane Calloway.
But no, the reason why, no, seriously, I just want to mention that the 13 colonies, the majority of the South had the majority of the land anyway. That's number one. Number two, with them having the majority of the land, they had the majority of the crops or the so-called plantations. Okay? And, you know, that's another reason why you had a war going on between the North and the South. And that's a whole nother topic on top of that, but it is correlating. So, yeah, we're gonna make sure that we get into that. I'm writing all of this down. I'm taking notes so I can make sure I can cover all of this again. There's nothing wrong with it. We I know I be jumping. I'm trying not to jump, but stay on this topic. But yes, they were trying to come after the South, okay, because the South had the majority of the crops. Yes, this is still correlating information. Not only that, the Army went with the South. The Army went with the South. And that's another thing that we could talk about. And I'm talking about the real Army, people that were trained, okay, to fight. And in one of my segments, I showed you guys that Abraham Lincoln was panicking and hiring any foreigner, okay, by way of act of Congress, hiring any foreigner to join the Union Army because the original Union Army joined the Confederate Army. That's documented, and they trying to claim that the Union won. And I'm like, how? When you're battling against a real army? They were lying. They compromised. We're going to talk about
its own Federal Reserve Bank. And at the time of its inception, there was a grand total of 13 districts, making it a grand total of 13 banks. So who was this 13th district that somehow people would overlook? It is the stateless area known today as the District of Columbia, under strict control of the U.S. Congress. More about this in another segment, but I mentioned all of this for a very particular...
By the way, that's the map of downtown. You see where it says White House, K Street? Anybody from the DMV, y'all know what time it is. Look closely.
So
anybody from the DMV, look.
13th district that somehow people would overlook.
Look how they set that up.
It's the stateless area known today.
Remember New York Avenue? Look, Massachusetts Avenue. Look how it's all connected. DuPont Circle. See, I'm from DC. Those of you that's from DC, y'all should know this. This is the map of how they designed it.
As the District of Columbia, under strict control of the U.S. Congress. More about this in another segment. But I mentioned all of this for a very particular reason. On December 23rd, 1913, 3 years prior to the creation of the FLB, President Wilson signed the Owen Glass Federal Reserve Act, or rather known as the Currency Bill, into law. This allowed for all major European powers to develop centralized control over all banks.
Ooh, that was
known as the Currency Bill into law. This allowed for all.
So the value of the $1 Federal Reserve note in 1913, from 1913, it was $1. All the way to 2005, that was less than 20 cents. How much do you think the dollar's worth today in 2025? 20 years later.
Anyone? 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 Class? Anyone? Anyone? Anyone?
I'm waiting. It's worth absolutely nothing.
All major European powers to develop centralized control over all banks in the United States and forced only one form of currency to be lawful, which was the Federal Reserve note. This was a much more modified version of the original Currency Act of September 1st, 1764. This means that all banks in the United States were now controlled by foreign entities, and these foreign entities were rather known as private banks. And these private banks collected interest on monies borrowed, or rather floating debt, by the US federal government. Taxes should ring a bell here.
Yep.
Now, I want you all to note that these foreign entities or private banks do not own any individual banks of the United States, but they do own, however, stock in those same banks or shares, and only member banks can hold those shares.
Here we go.
According to the Federal Reserve public records, about 38% of the banks in the United States are members of the Federal Reserve, and due to the currency bill signed by Woodrow Wilson, member banks must purchase shares based on their size alone. So the biggest banks would have the most shares, which would be Citigroup, JP Morgan, and Bank of America. And the largest stockholders of the banks that own shares are Barclays, Capital Research and Management, AXA, Bank of America, Fidelity Management and Research, State Street Corporation, Lazard Asset Management, Morgan Stanley, James Dimon, and Sanford Wheel.
I air these fools out. If I could get this information, the government could get this information. But again, the government is involved. So they're going to sit up there and say, they're going to try to study who should be held responsible. But it took me about a little bit less than a year to get this information. And I'm not finished. I aired them out, okay? I'm telling you who should be. We coming after these fools. We coming after these fools. Watch.
Signed by Woodrow Wilson, member banks must purchase shares based on their size alone. So the biggest banks would have the most shares, which would be Citigroup, JP Morgan, and Bank of America. And the largest stockholders of the banks that own shares are Barclays, Capital Research and Management, AXA, Bank of America, Fidelity Management and Research, State Street Corporation, Lazard Asset Management, Morgan Stanley, James Dimon, and Sanford Wheel. As the process of converting all promissory notes to Federal Reserve notes were currently underway, President Woodrow Wilson was quoted stating the following while campaigning his new agenda. Banks all over the country hastened to enter the Federal Reserve System, encouraging even congressional leaders to enact a new banking system and currency reform. Also, during the year of 1916, another piece of the Banking and Currency Reform Plan was underway, which eventually merged the 13 Federal Reserve banks that made up the Federal Land Bank with other banks alike in service corporations. When the merge was completed, it became known as the Farm Credit System, a now fully government-sponsored enterprise, or GSE for short, that still operates as a network of banks that provides lending services to beginning farmers, rural home buyers, agricultural producers, and rural infrastructure providers today. In addition to all of that, they also provide loans or credit for the commercial aspects of rural land, banks within the Farm Credit Bank only, and deals with refinancing, restructuring, rebuilding, and the repurchase of rural real estate for personal use. Let's break down each branch of this farm credit system first. There are 9 farm credit system institution types, which are Agricultural Credit Association, Bank for Cooperatives, Farm Credit Bank, FCS Financial Assistance Corporation, Federal Intermediate Credit Bank, Federal Land Bank, Federal Land Bank Association, Federal Land Credit Association, and Production Credit Association. These institutions are direct lending associations affiliated with one of the 4 banks of the farm credit system, who are CoBank, AgFirst, AgriBank, and Texas. There are 6 service corporations performing duties under the Farm Credit System as well.
Break it down!
The Farm Credit Foundations, Farm Credit Leasing Services Corporation, Federal Agricultural Mortgage Corporation, Federal Farm Credit Banks Funding Corporation, Advantis Incorporated, and Farm Credit Financial Partners Incorporated. This is just scratching the surface of who should be held responsible for the mistreatment of our ancestors, confiscation of our ancestors' lands, along with broken promises that were never upheld by those who created them. Another great example of how this capitalist society succeeded in popularizing industrialization for one's loss and another one's gain is America's most highly favored board game, called Monopoly. On January 5th, 1904, a board game called the Landlord's Game was patented under inventor Lizzie J. Magie, also known as Elizabeth Maggie Phillips, who was the hidden figure behind the idea of the Monopoly board game. As you may recall, that each time this game is played with your family or friends, things would take a turn for the worst near the conclusion of the game. Arguments, long periods of not speaking with each other, possible relationship separations, and so forth, right? Well, that's all due to the fact that this board game was never meant to be a fun, family-friendly type of game. In fact, it's a game of reality. A reality of how this society was established from its inception. Fraud.
Hold up. Hold up.
Set it on fire.
Oh, okay, I'm reloaded.
It's Dane Calloway.
In a 1936 magazine article of the Evening Star, Elizabeth Magie noted that the game was to be, quote, a practical demonstration of the present system of land grabbing with all its usual outcomes and consequences, end quote. Author Ruth Hall wrote that the term land grabbing, quote, obscures vast differences in the legality, structure, and outcomes of commercial land deals and deflects attention from the roles of domestic elites and governments as partners, intermediaries, and beneficiaries.
I'm gonna give y'all 30 seconds. I'm cutting the chat on right now. Who was this land grabbing affecting? The picture telling you. But I want to go ahead. I'm cutting the chat on. I'm gonna give y'all 30 seconds on the clock.
Yeah, DNA, let that shit bang.
Seconds. Okay. Here we go.
According to the Webster's Dictionary, the noun land grab means, quote, a usually swift acquisition of property such as land or patent rights, often by fraud or force.
Let that sink in. Again, goddammit.
A usually swift acquisition of property such as land or patent rights, often by fraud or force.
Again.
Means, quote, a usually swift acquisition of property such as land or patent rights, often by fraud or force, end quote. This is not just some simple board game, as it does, however, expose the duplicities of a federal currency system and the malevolent implications of capital accumulation by taking land and building an empire from the labors of those who were cheated, our ancestors.
You know what? This ain't over. It's not. They did everything fraudulently. What goes up got to come down. Karma works in both ways. Now that you know better, you're going to do better. I need y'all to get with us. When you see us hitting them with class action lawsuits, for these reasons that I presented throughout this live stream and many reasons that I presented throughout my YouTube channel. YouTube and TikTok, y'all, every single one of y'all, I don't care about your skin complexion. If you know right from wrong, then I need you to start doing right. It's just that simple. Yes, this is a complex issue, but we can make the corrections starting today. We can make the corrections starting today. We do not have to wait on anybody. We do not have to vote for somebody. We do not have to pray to somebody. We all we got to do is do what we have to do. That's all we have to do. Dane, you make it seem so simple. I understand that it's a complex issue, again, but that does not mean that we just sit down on our hands and do nothing. Again, now that you know what the issue is, and it's way more complex than this, and again, I told you that I am going to be definitely going in way more detail with a lot of different things that I covered throughout this segment. Be on the lookout for that, especially TikTok. Those folks on YouTube should know, but if they don't know, I'm glad that they're here to learn. But this is again, it's not over. I need you guys to wake up. It is time. It is time. It is time. It is time. We need to do this for us, not nobody else. We deserve to do this for us. I'm going to play one more thing real quick. Wake up.
Hey, look. Ain't no chucking, no jiving, no ducking, no hiding, no telling on people that's under assignment. Those are them people that fucked up our climate, changing up everything so you can't find it. Let's focus our people to focus our people, cause most of our people lose hope for our people. We choking the fan by revoking my people. We selling the fan, not promoting my people. You woke up today, it be different tomorrow. Stop or to follow with Lee Leonardo. Police killing innocent like it's their motto. How much more time we gon' take this to sorrow? How many times we go marching for peace? We still got black people that die in the streets. From your brothers or racist police. The wars not us, it's them races elite. Brother, wake up. Sister, wake up. This ain't nothing but shit they made up. Religion is here to manipulate minds. Only books slave masters gave us to read. Only books slave masters gave us to teach. Only books slave masters gave us to preach. Only books slave masters gave us some peace. What they have heaven here on earth. Wake up. Pick your cape up. Pick your face up. This is shake up. No time for makeup. Injustice is a white supremacy. You both affect the melanated people too much. I'ma keep raising my fist to the sky. I'ma keep raising my fist to the sky. This ain't for everybody. This is only for them conscious melanated people.
It's Dane Calloway.
It's up.
All right. Look, I love y'all. I'm about to do my shout outs right now. Shout out to everybody that subscribed and shout out to everybody that followed me on TikTok and on YouTube for the very first time. I welcome all the new people. Shout out to all the new members over there on TikTok, and shout out to all the new members over here on YouTube. Bruce, thank you for the super chat, and Leg Z, thank you for the super chat. And you said thank you for everything, Dane. Thank you, Watto. That's what Watto means. Thank you. Thank you. Man, I hope you all are doing well. We got so much more to cover. I may go live tomorrow. It depends on the situation. I'm not too sure about that. It depends on the situation. But if I do go live, it will be earlier than this. I'm gonna try my hardest not to be going live this late again. But I should at least give y'all a day, you know, those of you that are probably checking this out after the live stream ended, give y'all a day to at least catch up with this, because this is about, what, 2 hours? If I'm not mistaken, I believe it was 2 hours. Yeah, it is 2 hours long. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to at least give y'all some time. You know what I mean? Give you at least a day to catch up with that. Sylvia, thank you. I really appreciate that, Sylvia. Thank you. Runner Wolf, thank you for becoming a member. Somebody just hit the Cash App. D-Man, thank you. Thank you, D-Man, for the Cash App. I appreciate that. And Daquan, thank you for becoming a member. And I see all those followers on Twitch. I'm definitely going to be streaming to Twitch. I promise. We're going to work that out. I'm still trying to work these kinks out with both of these platforms for right now before I even hit Twitch. And then it's going to be another headache we got to deal with. But we definitely going to be doing that. Shannon Porter, thank you for becoming a member. We're going to be working it out where we can hit all of those platforms. But yes, the main one is YouTube. If you all want to see more of the content that I covered throughout the channel, you could go to the channel, or you could go to my 24-hour live stream that does pop off on a different channel called Dane Calloway Live. In fact, once I finish with this live, it should automatically send you guys there. I think it allows you to click it, but you have to be on YouTube for that, not TikTok. By the way, let me mention that. But yeah, shout out to all of you all for coming up and showing support. I highly recommend that you do your genealogy on your family. You got to know who you are. You have to. Don't let nobody tell you any different. Yeah, it's going to be some people out there saying you African and going to try to make fun of you and all the rest of that. Just keep in mind, the majority of those people that are doing that are foreigners. They are not from here. Okay? And they don't know who you are because they don't know who they are. They can't tell you anything about your family. Yeah, they can't. It's just impossible. They don't know anybody out there that's telling you that you African. They can't even tell you their great-grandparents' names, their great-great-grandparents' names, their great-great-great-grandparents' names, their great-great-great-great-grandparents' names. If they can't do that, they're fraud. Those are the people that you should not be listening to. Shout out to your ancestors. Shout out to my ancestors. Bless them all. We're doing it for them. We're doing it for our future generations to come. And we're doing it for our people right here, right now. I know. I always say, this ain't over with. We just getting started. Because we are. And I'm so glad that we defeated the #1 CIA PSYOP form of indoctrination, which was that pan-goofy movement. We're 3-0. I'm glad. Over these years, I knew it was going to take time. I'm so thankful. Shout out to y'all. Matter of fact, let me drop a bomb for y'all. That's amazing that you put foot to tail on these folks that's been out there lying about our people here. I really appreciate that. You all enjoy the rest of your evening. Have a good night. I'm going to see you all probably most likely Monday. I think it will be nice for me to go ahead and do it a day in between. Put a little day in between the live stream. Monday. I'm going to see y'all Monday. It's definitely got to be earlier than this. So I'm going to see y'all then. You all take care. Now, TikTok, y'all not going to end YouTube Shorts. Y'all not going to see my outro, okay? But it's going to be a brief pause, okay? Because I'm playing my outro for the main YouTube. You all take care. I love you. Wado.
I'm just here to make you think.
Yeah, DNA. Yeah, DNA.